Welcome to my presentation on how harassment shapes self-perception and well-being in social VR. Evidence from a controlled lab study. My name is Jonathan Chanter and I'm with the University of Würzburg. My co-authors are Christian Merz, Caroline Wienrich and Marc-Erich Latoschik. Social VR can feel surprisingly close to being together. Users share a space, do things side by side, and communicate with each other. In social VR, users are embodied with an avatar. They act through it with gestures, posture, and distance. And the avatar isn't just decoration. It can feel like an extension of the self and of the physical body. The avatar shapes presence, identity expression, and how we are recognized by others. That's why social VR can be impactful, and why negative experiences enabled by real-time voice and embodied interactions can be potentially harmful for users. Harassment is a recurring problem in social VR. According to latest interviews, 95% of users experienced or witnessed harassment. The verbal, visual, and physical forms of harassment feel disturbing and evoke negative feelings in users. Interviews with social VR users also point to attention. While users customize their avatars to identify with them and to express themselves, some users adapt their avatar design to avoid being targeted. Most research on harassment in social VR comes from interviews and surveys. They show prevalence, impact, and how people respond. Controlled lab studies are rare, but they let us isolate effects and allow for controlled exposure and manipulation. And although embodiment is often cited as a reason harassment feels so disturbing and real, its impact on self-perception is understudied. Our work addresses this gap by evaluating how harassment shapes self-perception and well-being in a controlled, social VR-like setting. In this talk, self-perception refers to how one experiences themselves in an avatar-mediated context and includes sense of embodiment, self-identification, and how they want their avatar to look. For well-being, we include short-term affect, self-esteem, and physiological arousal. To address our research question, we designed a controlled lab study that recreates a social VR-like interaction. We used a block building task as a joint activity in a social VR-like space. Participants were instructed to rebuild predefined structures. They weren't collaborating on a shared goal, but built side by side while being co-present in the same space, which creates natural opportunities for conversation and interaction. The second participant, the peer you can see on the right, was scripted and pre-recorded, but presented as another participant. With 52 participants, we ran a between subjects study with two conditions: a neutral control condition and a harassment condition. The participants were embodied with a generic-looking, full-body avatar matched to their gender. The pre-recorded peer was gender-matched to the gender of the participant as well. After information and consent, participants completed demographic pre-questionnaires. In VR, they got familiar with the task in a short tutorial. We also included mirror exposure and body movement tasks so participants could get accustomed to the avatar before the social interaction. Participants then entered the joint block building scenario with the peer. They were randomly assigned to either the control or the harassment condition. In the control condition, the peer engaged in small talk and behaved politely during the task. This gives us a baseline for a normal social VR-like interaction. In the harassment condition, the peer displayed harassing behaviors inspired from real social VR harassment. We included and combined the 3 types of harassment identified by prior work. Verbal harassment ran throughout the scenario as repeated insults and demeaning remarks. Second, visual harassment was implemented using the task objects. The peer built inappropriate structures and also threw blocks at the participant. Third, we added a physical component in which the peer invaded the personal space of the participant and blocked their view. After the social VR-like exposure, participants completed post-questionnaires to measure self-perception and well-being. This was followed by a semi-structured interview where we asked how they perceived the interaction and how they would design an avatar for a social VR experience. Throughout the VR exposure, we measured the heart rate and the participants' movements. Participants were fully debriefed after the interview. The manipulation in our experiment worked. Participants in the harassment condition formed a significantly more negative impression of the peer than in the control condition. The interviews mirrored this. The control interactions were often described as relaxing or motivating, while harassment was described as pressuring and stressful. On self-perception, we found significant effects for change in the VEQ and self-attribution in the VEQ+. In the harassment condition, participants reported more change in the avatar body experience and stronger attribution of their own attitudes and emotions to the avatar. Against our hypothesis, for well-being we did not observe differences on the self-reported questionnaires or the physiological measure. In the interviews, many participants reported just ignoring the peer, at least until the peer invaded the personal space. The participants described this moment as creepy and harassing, which is also shown in our movement analysis. During the personal space invasion, participants stepped back. Finally, participants reported different ways of coping, like ignoring, humor, and sometimes retaliation. And we saw a meaningful shift when we asked how participants would design their avatar for social VR. After the control condition, most participants opted for a personalized avatar. They wanted to express themselves and show their identity. The participants in the harassment condition, on the other hand, also considered idealized versions or even anonymized avatars to not display identity cues to other users. Overall, harassment changed how participants related to their avatar. They experienced more change and higher self-attribution, highlighting that self-perception is context-sensitive and shaped by social interactions. In our short lab experiment, we couldn't confirm prior work on the effects on well-being, which is potentially due to the short, controlled exposure and the experiment setting. On the other hand, the coping strategies reported by participants and the feedback in the interviews mirrored those reported in prior work. And together with the preference shift to anonymized avatars, they highlight safety design implications like the importance of protecting interpersonal boundaries and avatar design choices that allow for both safety and self-expression. Our study highlights why we need complementary methods. Interviews and field studies capture intensity and ecological complexity, while experiments like ours allow controlled manipulation. Together, they give us a more complete understanding of harassment in social VR and a stronger foundation for designing effective protections. Thank you for your time and attention.